I think I've talked to a lot of you. Through our American Spaces training that we've had, through visits when I was back in Washington, and now in my portfolio as the Information Resource Officer in Mexico covering Central America. And I know a lot of you have been familiar with this concept, this funny term we use called American Spaces. So it's been around for a while, but I want to explain a little bit about where we have been and kind of the changes that have happened in the last several years and where we're going in the future, following on some of Jonathan's words. To give you some concept, though, we talk about American Spaces. We're obviously more than just working with binational centers around the world. This is a pin map of all of our spaces. Does anybody want to guess how many spaces we have?
700.
700. Thank you, Kelsey. We have over 700 spaces around the world, which is a lot for us to manage in Washington, and then with 25 people like me around the world. And as our leadership in Washington started looking at these spaces, they realized, we really need to get a handle on this, because we've got people all over the world doing great things, but maybe not necessarily with the exact same focus. So they created the Office of American Spaces back in 2011, and so we actually had one office providing us with leadership. And so we've got Chris Dunnett here, who is my boss in Washington, who is the director of our Office of American Spaces. And so he and Jonathan and the rest of our leadership in the Bureau of International Information Programs gives us leadership and oversight. So that happened in 2011. And leadership and oversight is great. Oops. But what's even better is in 2012, we actually got a budget that went with this. So the budget has been fantastic. It's enabled us to do a lot more in our American spaces. And that's when you all may remember we started this new funding process where you started sending your proposals to your information resource officer, and then it went on to Washington. So that's what happened when we got that new budget. And then in 2013, we developed standards for American spaces. Hopefully, those of you that have been around for a while are familiar with the standards. We wanted to get everybody on the same page with what you're doing in terms of programming, what we want to see in terms of management, technology, and a variety of other elements that should be happening in your American spaces. And then we started with a prioritization of kind of looking at where we were really going to put an extra effort. And then in 2015, they realigned the portfolios of the information resource officers and our budget so that it would support the prioritization. So places like Colombia now has a new information resource officer, Sheila Weir. She's on her way as I speak. And now in 2016, we're really focusing on evaluating the impact that our American spaces are having. So you're all doing great programming, you're doing reporting for us, but we want to really look at the impact that your spaces are having. So we're trying to focus now on doing some surveys and follow-up, going deeper with our audiences. So that's kind of the background in how we got to where we are in 2016. The other thing that's happened this year is the developing of a vision for a modern American space. As Jonathan was saying, you've been around for decades, some of you as long, we're getting close to a century with ICANA in Buenos Aires, which is fantastic. And you all have been doing a good job with adapting to the changes. Now we're in a world where we've got social media, we've got all of these new technologies. So we want to bring those into our spaces. And so our colleagues in Washington developed this vision for what a modern American space looks like. And with that, what we want is for it to be easily accessible to target audiences. So that means that people can, you're centrally located, it's easy for your audiences to get there by public transportation. You're right where all the action is. We want it to support our foreign policy goals, and you've been hearing a lot about this with these foreign policy goals. We heard Deputy Assistant Secretary Gonzo Gallegos talking about it this morning. Jonathan's made some reference to this. But we have these shared issues in the region, in the Americas. We want to be working on these problems and solving them together. And so relating with supporting programming with our foreign policy goals, we also want you all to be offering dynamic programs in these 5 core areas. So English language teaching and learning, Education USA advising, cultural programs, working with alumni who have been on U.S. government programs, and then offering information about the United States. So that's kind of everything that's covered by our Bureau of International Information Programs. And we also want your binational centers to be a collaborative place for your community, so that you've got your students, you've got alumni, people in the larger community, and your partners all converging at your binational centers, so that you can be coming up with ideas, talking about issues that are of interest and importance to all of us. And we want it to be open to the public. So obviously all of you are serving your students, but we hope that you're also going to have be a venue for your larger community. And I think, like this morning, Kelsey from San Pedro Sula, Centro Cultural San Pedrano, was talking about how they've seen their numbers go up like 1,000% in the last year. And so that's not just their students. He, and his colleagues have gotten out into the community, and really they're reaching out to new partners, finding new people. That's exactly what we want to be seeing with our vision for new modern American spaces. So also going with the funding that I had talked about, a lot of that money has gone in the last several years into the facilities of your binational centers. And what we want to do is really work on taking, this is the I'll say it in English, the American Cultural Center in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, and how this was what a traditional library looks like. I'm guessing many of you have libraries that look similar. It's a traditional library. It's, it's nice, but it could look a little more fresh and modern. And this is before, and then this is the after picture. So what they did is they transformed their space. They went through the collection, they weeded the books that weren't getting used any longer. They updated the look and feel, so it's fresher. They used, they worked with the Smithsonian Institution and had a design consultation. So the images on the wall are those, and they're available to all of you through the Smithsonian Idea Book, which I'll say more about in a little bit. But they transformed their space. They worked with a local architect and then also with the designers from the Smithsonian to create this amazing, beautiful, innovative space. And so that, it's fantastic. This is what we want to see in our modern spaces. But I have to say also, a lot of the success is, the look is nice. You can build the new space, but I think the most important thing is the people and having your staff getting out there and really, reaching out to the community to transform the space. And I'm going to show you a couple other pictures. This is just so you can show that we really are looking at the globe. This is with the American Center in Hanoi, their before picture. So similar to what we saw elsewhere. And this is after their renovation. So again, really high tech, clean, modern lines. And just what we're hoping to see, having this focus with technology, but making it a bright programming space to bring in all sorts of audiences. So we also really want to have your spaces being strategic policy centers. And so, we talk about, we've had these long relationships. Your focus for years has been on English language teaching. We also have the partnerships with Education USA, so you're helping with the academic mobility. These are foreign policy priorities for us with the United States. I mean, the English language learning is really important. Also, of course, the 100,000 strong, the academic mobility. And then the maker programs, the kinds of activities that you all are starting to move to with the creation of these maker spaces, that supports our entrepreneurship goals and STEAM, empowering women and girls, social inclusion. We want to see all of these things happening in your spaces and your binational centers, and providing a platform where we can have these dialogues on our foreign policy, the issues that are of mutual interest to our countries. And I've mentioned the standards. The big change in this year, starting January 1st, was this adoption of the standards into one form. In the past, you may have remembered you had your own separate form just for binational centers. It got a little more down into the weeds on binational management, boards, et cetera. We decided that was a little bit too complicated, having these 3 different forms. So what we did was develop this one form for all of the different binational centers, American corners, American centers. And so, but we still have the guidance for the 5 programming areas. We still have the things for the facilities, the technology. All of that is included in here. So hopefully all of you have been using these in the last year, because we're coming up into the support fund cycle now, and so we'll again want you to go through and look at your, how you're doing on the standards. Hopefully over the last few years as we've had these standards, you're seeing a progression that you're moving up into the higher levels on the different elements. And also, I'm hoping that the standards have been around a while so that they're not causing anxiety for you all. I know I was sitting in Washington when we developed the standards, and there was a lot of concern about what if we're not gold on every single thing? And I think it speaks to this crowd and and our colleagues at the embassies and consulates that everybody wanted to be all gold. But has never been the expectation. The standards are meant to be aspirational. So we want you to look at where you are, hopefully feel good that you're meeting the standards, but that you're also on a path to improvement and getting better each year with these standards. And going with the standards is the reporting. This is so important. And we appreciate all that you do every month, or quarter, as you turn those into your counterparts at the embassies and consulates. This it's tied to money. The reporting and these numbers that you provide to us, I hope is helpful for all of you as you're able to count your numbers and hopefully see that your numbers are going up as you, and that you've also been able to look at not just the number of people that you have enrolled in your classes, but also the people that are actually walking through the doors of your binational centers, because you are reaching more people than just the students in your classes. When you have their parents or other family members coming with them, you're touching those people's lives too. Maybe somebody walks in to pick up their brother or sister from their class and they see, oh, they actually have educational advising. What's this about? So I think hopefully with the reporting, you're able to get a better sense of the people that are coming into your places. For our side, and when we turn these numbers into Washington, it's really helpful because they're able to look at this on a global level and then report those numbers up. And so when our leadership goes to Capitol Hill and speaks to Congress, they can talk about our programs and the impact that they're having. And it's really helpful when they can say, what, we had this number of millions of people that reached our spaces and that we were able to interact with. So thank you. The numbers are not just, we're not collecting them just for collecting's sake, but because we really do use them so that we can get the money then to help you all, to continue to do the great programming that you're doing. And then to help you do all of this fantastic work, we want to provide you with a lot of resources. So the first one is us, your information resource officers. So in Latin America, there's 4 of us. We've got Carol Bray, Carol, do you want to, who is based now in Buenos Aires. She was formerly in Brasilia, so she, I think, is probably a familiar face to many of you. There's Sheila Weir down in the lower right-hand corner, who's on her way. She is based in Colombia. We have Sarah Bornstein, who just arrived in Brasilia, so unfortunately she wasn't able to make it here today. And then there's me, who I cover Mexico and Central America. So we are always here. You can get in touch with us directly or through your contacts at the embassy and the consulates if you ever have questions about any of this. And we try to visit all the binational centers in our portfolio. I know it's a challenge in some of these countries where, Brazil, Argentina, places where you have huge numbers. But we're here to come visit, serve as advisors, help on whatever issues you have. We're the ones who look at your support funds proposals, and we also do training with the binational centers in the other American spaces. And then there is a website called americanspaces.state.gov. And this, I think we're in the process of renovating it, but this has a wealth of resources. We link to the websites for Education USA, for English, American English. We also have information on the Smithsonian partnership that I'll show you a little bit more on later. eLibrary USA, which is a fantastic product that we offer. It's a suite of databases that is an amazing resource that hopefully you all know about. And if you don't, please come see me or whoever your information resource officer is, and we can help you get connected so that you can tap into this resource for your students and your faculty, because it's fantastic and we spend a lot of money on it. We also have Share America, which has fantastic content for social media. So you can click on that and then sign up so you could get the daily emails. And then it's just great content to share about what's going on in the US. There's also a Spanish language version that you can get to share on your social media sites. And I'm trying to think, the Smithsonian. So let me show you a little more on the Smithsonian. So we've had this partnership with the Smithsonian for the last couple years, and out of that has come some really great products. There's the idea book that's up on the right side that shows you, it gives you all of the information that you would need to show architects and designers if you want to do a renovation project in your space. So down to the furniture, the recommended palettes of colors, carpet, a wealth of information. And then also from there you can download these really high quality graphic images that you can then print out locally and put up on your walls. So it's beautiful. They were fantastic on that. Then there's also the content book, and there's going to be some more sessions on this later. We have a couple colleagues from the Smithsonian who are going to be here presenting, I believe tomorrow. And what they've done is, the Smithsonian Institution is vast. There are a lot of museums there. They all have these really rich websites. And so through the content book, what they've done is they've curated the content from across the whole Smithsonian Institution and found material that they think is relevant and would be of interest and of use for programming in your binational centers. So I encourage you to take a look at that. We've also got this entrepreneurship incubator, which they did specific content, and our American Corners in Indonesia have adopted this, which is, it supports all of our goals for economic prosperity and entrepreneurship innovation. So they have specific content that's available there. They've got the Oceans Portal and other great resources. So that's the Smithsonian partnership. And then American Spaces Support Funds is so important that we're going to have another session. My colleague Wendy Zaman is going to give a presentation on Thursday morning. I'm sure it's going to be a very popular session. But well, and we're getting into that season now. Like September is usually when we get the cable in the State Department that outlines everything that is going to be the focus of the coming year. And Jonathan just gave us a glimpse that it looks like there's going to be a focus, as has been on the facilities, but also an increased focus on programming. So put that away and start thinking about that. But to give you a sense of what this is like, this is the numbers from fiscal year 15, so we're wrapping up fiscal year 16, but I've been told numbers look similar for 16 as well. The largest portion of our investment was on facilities, so we wanted to help you all realize this image of a modern American space. So that's been the largest portion of our investments. But but it's also, they've been putting money into resources, training, and other aspects. Staffing, technology. I think what's more interesting is looking at how that money was distributed around the world. Of course, we're looking at this globally, but of course, all of us here, right, are most interested in Latin America. And so that dark blue, if you look, Europe got the largest portion of money, but Europe has the largest number of American spaces. And then if you look, Latin America does not have the largest number of spaces, but they received an outsized percentage of the funding. So I think that speaks volumes, first, to the value of our partnerships with you all at binational centers, but also to the strategic importance of the region. So keep sending us great proposals too, and hopefully we continue to see this, you know, getting a large share of the pie with the funding. So with that, this is Casa Thomas Jefferson, kind of there before when they were getting ready to be renovated, to having this really dynamic platform. And I hope some of you got to see the presentation by Daniela earlier today about what's going on in their dynamic makerspace. And so that is New Directions in American Spaces and where we're headed. So does anybody have questions? Nothing at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
We used to have a standard, and now we have a new form that is covered by the whole umbrella of American Spaces.
Mm-hmm.
What's the process of assessment? I'm not familiar with the form. Is it sent to us through the PAO, or do they come and evaluate this?
Oh, what it should be is talk to your contact at the embassy, and they can share it with you. Also, if you want to go on that americanspaces.state.gov website, there's one of the buttons there, it says like American Spaces Guidance. In there, you should be able to go down and actually find the actual form. But it's probably easier to just talk to your contact at the embassy or consulate, and they can show. And then what it should be, take a look at the standards, but it should be a conversation with you and your counterparts at the embassy, and an honest assessment. If you're not reaching every single gold standard, that's fine. You know, maybe you're like, oh, well, you know what, we are actually, maybe we need to step it up with our educational advising. And so this will give you ideas for where you can improve. And also, when you have that conversation, you can look and see the areas that you want to improve in should be tying into your support funds requests too, so that hopefully you can be improving that. So, sure. Yeah.
You mentioned that there will be an increased focus on the programming, and I want to know if in the website we can look at examples of programs that have been included or something like that.
You know what, we do have some programs in there. We've got the Smithsonian content. And forgive me, Chris, do you want to speak? I know we've had some internal conversations about how that website is going to be revamped, and so.
Sure. Yeah, I think the best thing to do is, like Laura said, you know, we want to have great ideas that are connected to clear outcomes. What is it that you are trying to do, and why? For what purpose? That's the best thing to put in a good support. Can everybody hear me in the back? If you want to put in a good support funds proposal, it's, you know, I would think about what Gonzo Gallegos talked about this morning, those 4 pillars of what our interests, our mutual interests, I think, are in Latin America, and ask yourselves the questions that he posed this morning. Hey, what is it that we are trying to do? What's the outcome that we're trying to achieve? And just kind of tell a good story about what's the programmatic thing that you want to do, and then that makes sense to us, and that makes the most competitive support funds proposal. For programming, there's also technology. If you want to say, hey, we need technology to support this, or hey, we have a really highly capable one of our BNCs is really, really good and it's going to act as the hub for some of our other places, but we need to make sure that we have connectivity. So if we have a great programming going on here, we can actually share it out with other parts of the country. That makes sense too, because then we get a lot more value from that programming, and not everybody's trying to reinvent. But we'll come out in the cable, and we always kind of highlight some of the areas, and we're still working on that right now, because I have discovered that what we say in that of what our priorities are has an immense influence on what the requests are that we get. So we're going to be careful about what we say, but basically we're looking for good ideas that talk about specific outcomes. Anything else? This is your chance. I'll hang around outside afterwards too. I'm probably talk into this little thing.
Yeah. Another questions? Well, thank you all very much.
So Laura, on behalf of ABLA, here's your diploma participation and Tlaquepaque.
Thank you so much.
Not too far from you. But
Yeah, no, but thank you so much.
Thank you.